Captain Jaren Hale sat in the cockpit of his starfighter, eyes scanning the dark expanse of the nebula verge. His mission was clear: gather intelligence on the Arvani forces stationed near the derelict space station called Elysium Outpost. The war between humans and the Arvani had raged for decades, each side believing the other was the enemy. But Jaren had always believed in one rule above all else: life mattered no matter which side it belonged to. The station loomed ahead, a skeleton of twisted metal and shattered panels floating silently in the void. Sensors flickered across Jaren's display, warning him of unstable energy readings. He eased the controls, careful not to crash into the debris. The silence of the void was broken only by the soft hum of the engines and the occasional crackle of his comlink. Jaren, proceed with caution. Elysium has been abandoned for years. Sensors indicate possible Arvani patrols, said Commander Ria's voice, calm but firm, over the comm. I know, Commander. I'll be careful, Jaren replied. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the station's remains. Something felt off. He docked at the station's outer hull, using the magnetic clamps to secure his ship. The airlock hissed open and Jaren stepped into the darkness of the station. His boots clanged on the metal floor, echoing in the hollow corridors. Dust floated in the dim light, giving the place a ghostly feel. As he moved deeper, his flashlight caught something unusual, a small pale hand sticking out from beneath a pile of rubble. Jaren froze. He dropped to his knees, quickly moving the debris with strong, careful hands. Underneath, he found a young Arvani girl no more than 8 years old. Her violet eyes were wide with fear and her tiny body trembled. Hey, it's okay, Jaren said softly, reaching out. I'm not going to hurt you. The girl's lips quivered. She shook her head, trying to crawl away, but the debris had trapped her leg. Jaren's heart sank. She was just a child. Children were never supposed to be part of war. Hold still, I can help, he murmured. Slowly, he lifted the heavy metal, careful not to hurt her further. The girl's leg was bruised and scratched, but thankfully not broken. Jaren supported her, lifting her into his arms. She clung to him instinctively, small arms wrapping around his neck. Lyra, the girl whispered, her voice barely audible. Jaren blinked. Lyra? He repeated. She nodded, tears running down her face. Lyra, scared. Don't worry, Lyra, I'm here. You're safe now. The station shook suddenly. A distant explosion rocked the corridor, sending dust and small debris raining down. Jaren realized the station was unstable. He had to get out quickly. He sprinted toward his ship, carrying the girl carefully, ignoring the warning lights flashing across the walls. Halfway to the exit, he heard a noise behind him. A faint, mechanical whirring. He turned slightly, scanning the shadows. A patrol drone, its sensors red and scanning, hovered toward them. Jaren's mind raced. He couldn't fight a drone with the girl in his arms. He needed a distraction. Spotting a loose panel on the wall, he grabbed a metal rod and threw it across the corridor. The clang echoed, and the drone's sensors swiveled toward the sound. Jaren ducked and ran, heart pounding. The corridors twisted and turned, but finally he reached the airlock. He punched in the override code, and the door hissed open. Once inside the ship, he set Lyra down on the seat and secured her with the safety harness. She looked up at him, fear still evident but mixed with a glimmer of trust. You're going to be okay, Lyra. I promise, Jaren said, sliding into the pilot's seat. He powered up the engines and detached from the station, watching as it groaned and cracked, chunks of metal drifting into space. As the stars stretched in the warp ahead, Jaren's mind raced. He had rescued the girl, but now what? Taking her back to human space could be dangerous. The Arvani would consider her their child. They would hunt for her. But leaving her alone in the wreckage was unthinkable. Hours passed in silence, broken only by Lyra's soft sniffles. She clutched a small stuffed creature she had found in the rubble, holding it tightly as if it would protect her. Lyra, Jaren said gently. What happened to you? She looked at him, hesitation in her eyes. Then in broken words she whispered, Station. Attack, Mama! Gone. Her mother. Jaren felt a pang of guilt and concern. Selara, Lyra's mother, was an Arvani diplomat. If she was still alive, she would be desperate to find her daughter. And if she wasn't, Jaren couldn't even imagine the pain. He placed a reassuring hand on Lyra's shoulder. We'll find her, Lyra, I promise. Lyra's eyes softened. She sniffled and nodded, leaning slightly against him. Despite everything, trust was beginning to grow. The next day, Jaren contacted Commander Rhea. "Commander, I found a survivor on Elysium," he said, careful with his words. "She's a child, Arvani. I'm bringing her back." There was silence on the other end. Finally, Rhea spoke, her tone mixed with concern and disapproval. "Jaren, you know the rules. Bringing an enemy child into human space, it could spark a diplomatic incident." "I don't care about rules right now," Jaren replied firmly. "She's a child. She needs protection." Rhea sighed, then relented slightly. "Just be careful. If Solara finds out you have her, things could get complicated." Jaren nodded, knowing the truth of her words. The Arvani were proud and intelligent. Any human who intervened in their affairs would be scrutinized. But as he looked at Lyra sleeping quietly in the pilot seat, he knew there was no other choice. Compassion had to come first. During the journey to the Arvani homeworld, Jaren spent hours talking to Lyra, telling her stories about stars and planets, about humans and their strange ways, about courage and hope. She listened intently, her eyes brightening with each tale. For the first time since the attack, she smiled. One evening, as the ship drifted past a ringed planet, Lyra asked softly, "Captain, why help me?" Jaren smiled faintly, his gaze on the swirling rings below. "Because it's the right thing to do. No matter who you are, no matter what side you're on, everyone deserves to be safe." Lyra nodded, hugging her stuffed creature tightly. Safe, yes. As they approached the Arvani homeworld, tension filled the air. Jaren could see the massive cities below, glittering like jewels under the twin suns. He took a deep breath. Returning Lyra would not be easy. Some Arvani might see him as an intruder. Others might be grateful but cautious. And Solara? Her reaction was unknown. The landing was smooth but nerve-wracking. Soldiers in sleek armor approached, weapons ready. But they froze when they saw the child in Jaren's arms. Lyra's violet eyes met theirs, wide and innocent. And even the most stoic soldiers hesitated. Finally, a figure stepped forward. A tall, graceful Arvani woman with silver hair and eyes like amethysts. Her gaze locked on Lyra, and her expression softened immediately. "Lyra!" she exclaimed, rushing forward. The child squealed and ran into her mother's arms. Solara turned slowly to Jaren, her eyes studying him. There was surprise, caution, and something else he could not read. Gratitude, perhaps, or curiosity. "You saved her," she said quietly, her voice calm but powerful. "You risked yourself for her." Jaren nodded. "I couldn't leave her behind. Children should never suffer because of war." Solara's gaze lingered on him. For the first time, she saw a human not as an enemy, but as someone capable of courage, compassion, and honor. In that moment, an unspoken connection formed, a seed that would grow in ways neither of them could predict. As Jaren prepared to leave, Solara spoke again, softer this time. "Thank you, Captain Hale, for everything." Jaren gave a small bow, hiding the warmth in his chest. He turned back to his ship, knowing the journey was far from over. He had rescued a child, but now the real challenge would begin, navigating the complex bonds between humans and Arvani, and discovering what it truly meant to rise above fear, hatred, and war. Lyra waved from her mother's arms, a bright smile on her face. Jaren waved back, a sense of hope blooming in his heart. Perhaps in a galaxy filled with conflict, one act of courage could start something far greater than any weapon. And with that thought, he lifted off into the stars, ready for whatever awaited him next. Jaren Hale returned to his ship after leaving Lyra safely in her mother Solara's care. The Arvani capital had been more magnificent than he had imagined. Tall spires of crystalline metal reflecting the twin suns, streets filled with citizens going about their lives, and air humming with the quiet power of advanced technology. Yet even in this beauty, tension lingered. Jaren knew that humans visiting Arvani territory were often met with suspicion, and his presence as a human who had intervened directly in their affairs would not go unnoticed. As his ship left the atmosphere, he contacted Commander Rhea once more. "Captain Hale," Rhea said, her tone still carrying concern. "You returned the child safely, but Solara's reaction is unknown. Stay alert. Your actions might be praised or they might provoke anger. Tread carefully." "I understand, Commander. But she is a child. That's what matters," Jaren replied firmly. He set the course back toward the human fleet's staging area, but his thoughts kept returning to Solara and Lyra. Meanwhile, on the Arvani homeworld, Solara watched Lyra curl up against her chest. The child's tiny body trembled slightly, still recovering from the trauma of the attack on the station. Silara's heart was heavy with worry. She had been on a diplomatic mission when the attack occurred, leaving Lyra alone at the station. The thought of losing her daughter forever had been unbearable. Silara's violet eyes softened as she thought about the human who had saved Lyra. His courage, his calm under pressure, it was unlike anything she had expected from the enemy. She had spent years studying humans, learning their strengths and weaknesses, yet this one had surprised her. Not with a weapon or a strategy, but with kindness. That evening, Silara visited Lyra's favorite spot in the palace gardens. Flowers with iridescent petals glowed softly under the twin suns, and small hovering birds chirped in harmony. Lyra toddled behind her, curious and eager to explore. "Do you want to play, Lyra?" Silara asked gently. Lyra nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, play." "Like Captain Hale?" Silara smiled. The child had already associated courage and safety with the human captain. "Perhaps one day we can thank him properly," Silara said, though she wasn't sure what form that would take. Back aboard his ship, Jaren studied the star maps and reviewed intelligence data. The Arvani patrol routes were sophisticated, and any human caught lingering near the capital could be seen as a threat. He realized he had walked a thin line just by rescuing Lyra, yet he felt no regret. Children were innocent, and innocence deserved protection, no matter the consequences. As he plotted his course back to human-controlled space, alarms suddenly blared in the cockpit. Sensors indicated an incoming vessel, moving at high speed from the direction of the Arvani homeworld. Jaren's pulse quickened. Was it a patrol sent to check on the child? Or something more dangerous? He activated the comm link, sending a cautious message. "This is Captain Hale, identify yourself." A crackling response came in a language he barely understood. The ship's systems translated the message. "Human captain, you have been observed. Your actions are noted. Return the child to her mother immediately or face consequences." Jaren exhaled slowly. The Arvani were serious about their rules, and even though Silara had shown gratitude, there were always those who followed orders without question. He adjusted his shields and prepared for evasive maneuvers. For hours, the two ships moved in a silent dance across the stars, testing each other's speed and tactics. Jaren was careful not to provoke an attack, but he also could not abandon Lyra's safety. Finally, the pursuing vessel changed course and returned to the Arvani homeworld. Jaren allowed himself a brief moment of relief. The threat had passed, but he knew that the war and the rules of loyalty were far from over. Meanwhile, Silara received news of the encounter. Her brow furrowed as she considered the situation. Jaren had acted without orders, saving her child, and now faced the risk of being branded a troublemaker. Yet she could not ignore the bravery and kindness he had shown. In her mind, a strange respect was forming, a recognition that perhaps, just perhaps, humans were capable of more than she had been taught to expect. Over the next few days, Silara spent time observing her daughter. Lyra began to speak more about the human who had saved her. "Captain Hale brave," she said one morning, her small hands gesturing excitedly. "Captain, my star. Protect." Silara smiled, touched by the child's innocence and admiration. She realized that this human had not only saved Lyra's life, but had also left an impression on her soul, and perhaps in a way on her mother's soul as well. Back on his ship, Jaren reflected on the events of the last few days. He had faced danger, broken rules, and risked his own life for a child he barely knew. Yet the satisfaction he felt was unlike anything he had experienced before. Saving Lyra had not been about recognition or reward. It had been about doing what was right. That simple principle, he realized, was worth any risk. During a routine systems check, Jaren noticed a strange energy signature nearby. A small Arvani scouting craft was moving in his direction. This time he didn't wait for a warning. He adjusted course, maneuvering his ship with expert precision to avoid detection. He understood that trust between enemies was fragile, and any misstep could lead to disaster. As he piloted the ship through the asteroid fields near the border of human space, Jaren allowed himself a brief moment to look at the stars. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless worlds and endless possibilities, and yet here he was, focused on one small life, a single child who had reminded him why humanity, at its best, could be brave, compassionate, and wise. Finally, he reached a safe distance from the Arvani border, and transmitted a secure message to Commander Rhea. Lyra is safe with her mother. No further pursuit detected. Mission complete, he reported. Good work, Hale, Rhea replied. You've handled this situation with courage and wisdom, but be prepared. Solara's gratitude may bring unexpected consequences. The Arvani are not a simple people and alliances are fragile. Jaren nodded silently. He understood the weight of her words. The story of his rescue would spread, and with it both admiration and suspicion. But for now he allowed himself to feel a quiet sense of satisfaction. He had saved a life, and sometimes that was enough. Back on the Arvani homeworld, Solara spent long hours considering what Jaren had done. She saw the child's recovery and joy and felt a deep, unspoken connection to the human who had risked everything. In her mind, questions began to form. Who was this man? Could she trust him? And most importantly, could someone from an enemy species truly be capable of such honor and courage? Lyra, meanwhile, had begun to explore her homeworld with renewed curiosity. She asked endless questions about humans, about space, and about the captain who had become her guardian. Each question was a reminder to Solara of the human's presence and the impact of his bravery. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of violet and gold, Solara stood at the balcony of her residence looking out over the city. She thought of Jaren Hale, the human who had entered her life unexpectedly and changed it forever. Gratitude mixed with admiration, and a spark of something more began to grow. An emotion she had not expected to feel toward an enemy. In that quiet moment, Solara realized that sometimes courage could bridge the gap between worlds, and that kindness could be more powerful than weapons, more enduring than fear. Jaren Hale had done more than save her daughter. He had begun to reshape her understanding of humanity itself. And far away, in the black expanse of space, Jaren piloted his ship toward the stars, unaware of the ripples his actions had set in motion. The galaxy was full of danger, full of enemies, but also full of possibilities. And for the first time in a long while, he felt that hope could exist, even across the boundaries of war. Weeks passed since Captain Jaren Hale had rescued Lyra and returned her to her mother, Solara. The galaxy remained tense with whispers of uneasy alliances and simmering mistrust between humans and the Arvani. Yet in the midst of political calculations and military strategies, something unexpected began to unfold. Lyra's laughter filled the halls of the Arvani palace as she explored its many rooms and gardens. She had begun calling Jaren her guardian star, a name that made Solara smile quietly to herself. The child's attachment was innocent, pure, and growing by the day. Solara watched with a mixture of amusement and concern. She had spent years learning to be careful with emotions, to never let personal feelings interfere with diplomacy, and yet she could not ignore the warmth that Jaren had brought into their lives, even from a distance. One morning, Lyra tugged on Solara's hand. "Mama, look," she exclaimed, pointing toward the palace courtyard where a small hovercraft lay. It was a gift from Jaren, a human creation adapted to Arvani technology, designed for Lyra to practice simple navigation safely. Solara knelt beside her daughter, smiling at the excitement in her eyes. "It is very clever," she said. "Your friend Captain Hale must have worked hard to make this." Lyra nodded eagerly. Captain Hale. "Teach me fly!" Solara's curiosity was piqued. She had heard of human ingenuity before, but the thought of a human designing something specifically for her daughter was remarkable. More than that, it revealed a patience and kindness she had not expected from the enemy. Meanwhile, Jaren had returned to his ship, continuing missions for the human fleet. But he could not shake the thought of Lyra and Solara. The bond he had formed with the child lingered in his mind, and he often wondered how Solara viewed him, not just as a human, but as a man who had risked everything for her daughter. The political landscape grew more complicated as reports arrived of small skirmishes near neutral zones. Both humans and Arvani were testing boundaries, and any act of goodwill could be overshadowed by suspicion. Jaren's rescue of Lyra was no exception. While some Arvani praised his bravery, others questioned his motives. Similarly, humans debated whether he had overstepped his authority. Solara, ever mindful of her responsibilities, decided to speak directly with Jaren. Using secure channels, she contacted him, her voice calm yet carrying a subtle firmness. "Captain Hale," she began, "I wish to thank you personally for what you have done. You have saved my daughter, and for that I am deeply grateful. Jaren's response was steady but polite. I did what I had to do. Lyra deserved safety. That was all that mattered. Solara hesitated, then continued. I would like to understand more about you, about your people, and why you acted with such courage. Perhaps there is more that humans and Arvani can learn from one another. Jaren considered her words. Diplomatic conversations were not his specialty, but this was different. Solara's sincerity was evident. I am willing to talk, he said finally. If you wish to understand, I will answer your questions. Over the following weeks, Solara invited Jaren to share knowledge about human culture, technology, and strategy, always in ways that respected both their peoples. Initially, these meetings were cautious. Jaren explained the human reliance on creativity, courage, and resourcefulness. Solara asked insightful questions, noting the similarities and differences between their species. Yet, it was not only intellectual curiosity that guided their interactions. There was an unspoken connection, a mutual recognition of character. Solara found herself admiring Jaren's calmness in danger, his quiet confidence and the respect he showed to life, even that of her people. Jaren, in turn, recognized Solara's intelligence, her ability to lead, and the gentle strength with which she cared for Lyra. One day, Solara brought Lyra to the courtyard hovercraft. Captain Hale has sent this for you, she explained. Would you like to try it? Lyra's eyes sparkled with excitement. Yes, teach me fly, Captain Hale. Jaren smiled as he demonstrated the controls. The hovercraft lifted gently into the air, and Lyra's laughter rang out as she followed his instructions. Solara watched, feeling a surprising mix of admiration and warmth. The human's patience and ability to teach, to connect with her daughter, was remarkable. As Lyra became more confident, Solara approached Jaren. You are unlike any human I have known, she said quietly. Your actions. They go beyond rules or orders. You care deeply. Jaren looked at her, his expression earnest. I care because it is right. Because life matters. That is what drives me, and Lyra, she reminded me why it is important to act. Solara's gaze lingered on him, and for a moment words were unnecessary. There was mutual understanding, respect, and a subtle acknowledgement of feelings neither had expected. The growing bond, however, did not go unnoticed. Within the Arvani Council, there were those who viewed Jaren's actions with suspicion. Rumors spread that the human captain was attempting to influence the Arvani diplomatically, or worse, to manipulate them. Solara knew she had to tread carefully. She respected Jaren, yet she also had her duty to her people. One evening, as the twin suns set and painted the sky in shades of violet and gold, Solara reflected on the delicate balance between gratitude, duty, and the unexpected feelings that had begun to grow within her. She realized that her admiration for Jaren had deepened beyond respect. His courage, kindness, and integrity had created a connection she could not ignore, even as a diplomat and mother. Meanwhile, Jaren faced his own challenges. He was aware that remaining in Arvani territory, even briefly, could draw criticism from his own fleet. Yet he found himself wanting to help, to ensure that Lyra was safe and thriving, and to understand Solara better. In moments of quiet, he thought about her strength, her intelligence, and the subtle warmth she had shown him. He knew that the line between duty and personal attachment was thin, and crossing it could have consequences. As the days passed, Lyra became the bridge between their worlds. She asked endless questions about humans, about stars, about courage, and about the captain who had saved her. Each question reminded Solara of the human's presence, and of the growing respect and perhaps something more that had taken root between them. One afternoon, as Lyra practiced piloting the hovercraft under Jaren's guidance, a sudden energy surge triggered a security alert. A small group of rogue Arvani soldiers had attempted to intercept communications, suspicious of the human captain's intentions. Jaren reacted instantly, guiding Lyra safely to the ground while neutralizing the threat with precise maneuvers. Solara arrived moments later, her expression both proud and concerned. You acted decisively, she said. Your skill is impressive, Jaren nodded. It is my duty to protect those under my care. Solara studied him, noting not only his competence but the unwavering moral compass that guided him. In a quiet moment, she realized that she was no longer seeing him merely as an enemy or a stranger, but as a man of rare character, someone she could trust someone who had earned her respect, and perhaps even her admiration. As twilight fell over the Arvani capital, Lyra sat between them, smiling and chattering about her day. Solara glanced at Jaren, recognizing the subtle but undeniable bond forming between human and Arvani, child and adult, two worlds bridged by courage and kindness. Solara knew that the road ahead would not be simple. Tensions between their peoples remained high, and diplomacy required careful navigation. Yet for the first time she felt a sense of hope. Perhaps it was possible for humans and Arvani to understand one another, to cooperate and even to trust, and perhaps, in this moment she realized, some connections went beyond politics, beyond duty and beyond war. Some connections were about character, about courage, and about the choices that defined who a person truly was. Jaren, unaware of the full depth of Solara's thoughts, continued to teach Lyra, sharing stories of stars, courage, and hope. Each lesson, each shared moment, built a bridge of understanding, not only for the child but for her mother as well. As the night sky stretched above the city, filled with stars and possibilities, Solara and Jaren found themselves sharing a quiet moment of mutual understanding. The galaxy remained fraught with danger and mistrust, yet in that instant, they saw the potential for something different, a connection built on respect, compassion, and the courage to rise above fear. Lyra, tired but happy, leaned against Jaren as he guided her through a simple navigation exercise. "Captain Hale, my star?" she whispered, her small voice filled with trust. Jaren smiled faintly, glancing at Solara, who watched with a mixture of pride and something deeper. "I'll always protect you, Lyra," he said softly. And in that quiet courtyard, beneath the twin moons of the Arvani homeworld, two people from enemy worlds began to see each other not as strangers or adversaries, but as allies, teachers, and perhaps something more. The first seeds of understanding, trust, and connection had been planted, and the galaxy would never be quite the same. Tensions between humans and Arvani had been rising quietly, but suddenly, disaster struck. A rogue faction of Arvani warriors, disagreeing with Solara's diplomatic approach, launched a surprise attack on the capital. Explosions rocked the city and citizens ran in panic. Alarms blared across the palace, and Solara immediately rushed to Lyra's side. "Stay close to me, Lyra," she commanded, her voice calm but firm. Jaren, alerted by the comm link, raced toward the capital in his starfighter. The rogue Arvani forces were well coordinated, but he could see the chaos unfolding from orbit. Buildings were damaged, citizens scattered, and the hovercrafts in the city were being disabled by energy disruptors. Jaren knew he had to act quickly. Upon landing, Jaren was met with skepticism by palace guards. "Human captain, what are you doing here? You could be a spy." One officer demanded. "I'm here to help protect the citizens, including Lyra," Jaren replied firmly. "I will not let innocent lives be harmed." Solara arrived moments later, her eyes scanning the chaos. She nodded slightly at Jaren, recognizing his commitment. "We must coordinate," she said. "Together we can save the city and our people." Jaren and Solara quickly devised a plan. He would use his ship's advanced systems to disable the energy disruptors affecting the city's defenses, while Solara organized citizens and palace guards to evacuate vulnerable areas. Lyra, watching from a safe distance with a few trusted aides, clutched her mother's hand tightly, her small face pale but determined. The battle was intense. Jaren piloted his starfighter with precision, dodging energy blasts while sending targeted EMP pulses to disable the rogue ships. Solara coordinated her forces, her voice calm and commanding, inspiring confidence in those around her. Despite the danger, the city began to stabilize. At one point, a rogue ship broke through the defensive line and aimed directly for the palace. Jaren acted without hesitation, intercepting it just in time. The ship exploded harmlessly in orbit, its fragments scattering into space. Solara watched, her heart pounding, as the human captain risked everything for her city, for her daughter, and for her people. Once the immediate threat had passed, Solara approached Jaren. Dust clung to his uniform, and a few scratches marked his face, but his calm expression remained. "You risked your life to save us all," she said softly. "Again," Jaren nodded, brushing dust from his sleeve. "I do not distinguish between friend or enemy when it comes to innocent lives. I act because it is right." Solara studied him closely. His courage, his sense of morality, and his unwavering dedication were qualities rare in any species. She felt a wave of admiration and something deeper, surging within her. She realized she was no longer seeing Jaren merely as a human, but as a man whose character transcended the divisions of war. Lyra ran up, throwing her small arms around Jaren. "Captain Hale!" "You saved City. Brave," she exclaimed, her voice filled with awe. Jaren chuckled, ruffling her hair gently. "Brave like you, Lyra. You stayed calm and strong." Solara watched the interaction, noticing how effortlessly Jaren connected with her daughter. It was not just bravery in battle that impressed her. It was his heart, his compassion, and the way he inspired trust. As the city began to recover, Solara spoke quietly to Jaren. "I owe you more than words can say, not just for saving Lyra, but for showing us that courage and compassion can unite even in times of war." Jaren's eyes met hers. "It was my choice, but I am glad you see it that way." For the first time, Solara allowed herself to acknowledge the feelings that had grown since their first encounter. Respect, admiration, and even attraction, all intertwined with the gratitude for saving her daughter. She knew that the galaxy was still dangerous and their worlds remained divided, but she also knew that this human had earned her trust and her heart in ways that few could. As night fell over the city, Jaren and Solara stood together on the palace balcony, watching the stars. Lyra slept nearby, exhausted but safe. The battle had tested not only their skills but also the trust and connection between them. And in that moment, Solara realized that some bonds, formed through courage, compassion, and shared trials, were stronger than any war or distance. Jaren, sensing her thoughts, did not speak. Words were unnecessary. The shared experience had built something unshakable, a mutual recognition of character, a foundation of trust and the spark of something that could grow into a deep, enduring bond. The rogue faction had been defeated, but their threat reminded everyone that danger was always near. Yet in the quiet aftermath, Solara and Jaren shared a moment of understanding. Even in a galaxy filled with enemies, hope, courage, and trust could shine brighter than any weapon. And Lyra, the child who had brought them together, slept peacefully, unaware that the bond between her mother and her guardian star was already beginning to change the course of their lives, and perhaps even the future of their worlds. The following days were filled with rebuilding. The city recovered quickly, thanks to the combined efforts of Arvani engineers and human advisors who Jaren invited to help. Streets were repaired, energy grids restored, and damaged buildings stabilized. Citizens praised both Solara and Jaren for their leadership during the attack. Solara found herself spending more time with Jaren, observing not only his tactical skill, but his humanity. He did not boast, he did not seek recognition, and yet his actions inspired everyone around him. She realized that this human was more than an ally. He was someone she could trust, someone she admired, and perhaps someone she wanted in her life beyond duty and politics. One afternoon, Solara brought Lyra to the gardens, where Jaren was teaching the child how to navigate the hovercraft through a gentle course. Lyra laughed as the small craft weaved between glowing flowers, her confidence growing with every turn. "You're doing very well, Lyra," Jaren said, smiling. "Captain, my star," Lyra exclaimed. "Fast, brave." Solara watched quietly, a soft smile on her face. Her admiration for Jaren deepened as she observed his patience, his ability to teach, and the gentle way he encouraged her daughter. She realized that his presence had not only changed Lyra's life, but had also affected her own. That evening, as the twin suns set, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold, Solara invited Jaren to walk with her. The city below was quiet now, the aftermath of the attack slowly fading. "Captain Hale," Solara began, her voice calm but carrying warmth. "I have watched you, not just in battle but in how you care for my daughter. You have shown courage, compassion, and honor, qualities that are rare in any species. You have my respect, my gratitude, and something more." Jaren looked at her, surprised but not entirely. He had seen glimpses of this admiration before, in her careful observation and in the way she trusted him with Lyra's care. "Solara, I did what I thought was right. I never expected anything in return, but I am glad you see me in this way." Solara's eyes softened. "There is more than gratitude, Jaren. I want you in my life, not just as a friend or ally, but forever if you are willing." Jaren felt a warmth spread through him, He had never expected that saving a child would lead to this moment, a bond with someone from the enemy's world, someone he respected and admired. "Solara, if you wish it, I would be honored." Lyra, hearing the conversation, ran up and hugged both of them. "Captain, stay, Mama, stay, family," she exclaimed, her small voice full of joy. Solara and Jaren exchanged a look, understanding that their connection was no longer just about duty or gratitude. It was about family, trust, and love. The child who had been at the center of danger had brought them together, creating a bond that transcended war. The news of their alliance spread quickly. Humans and Arvani alike took notice of the unusual partnership. While some were skeptical, most were inspired by the courage and compassion that had brought two worlds together. Jaren's actions, once seen as risky, became a symbol of hope. That even in a galaxy torn by war, understanding and cooperation were possible. In the following months, Jaren chose to remain on the Arvani homeworld. He worked with Solara to strengthen diplomatic ties, rebuild communities affected by the conflict, and foster understanding between their peoples. Lyra thrived in a home filled with warmth, learning from both human ingenuity and Arvani wisdom. Solara and Jaren's relationship grew steadily. They spent time exploring the city, teaching Lyra about the stars and sharing stories of courage and hope. Their bond became an example of how compassion, trust, and shared experience could bridge even the deepest divides. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the horizon, Solara, Jaren, and Lyra stood together on a balcony, looking out at the city they had helped protect. The air was filled with quiet peace, a stark contrast to the chaos of past weeks. Jaren turned to Solara, his expression gentle. "The galaxy is still full of danger," he said. "But moments like this, moments with you and Lyra, remind me why it is worth fighting for a better future." Solara nodded, her hand finding his. "And together, we can make that future brighter. For our people, for our children, and for ourselves." Lyra hugged them both tightly. "Family," she exclaimed, her voice full of certainty and joy. And in that moment, Jaren realized that the act of saving a single child had changed not only her life, but the course of his own. Two worlds, once divided by war, were beginning to understand each other, and in the quiet of that peaceful night, humanity and Arvani alike found hope in courage, compassion, and the bonds that could rise above conflict. The stars above shimmered with possibilities, and Jaren knew that, for the first time, the galaxy felt a little smaller, a little safer, and a little brighter because he had chosen to do what was right, and because one act of bravery had led to a lifetime of connection, trust, and love.